So how exactly do you build a nation? Not with bricks and mortar, but with laws, rules, and power. Today, we're going to trace the 200-year-long paper trail that literally built the framework for modern India. It's an amazing story about a trading company that somehow became an empire, and then how that empire gave way to a nation. So where do we start? Well, here's the plan. First, we'll look at how a private company got so incredibly powerful that the British Parliament itself had to get involved. Then, we'll get to the massive turning point, when the British Crown just took over completely. And finally, we'll walk through those last few steps that put India on the path to ruling itself. All right, so our story kicks off with a really weird power struggle. It wasn't between two countries. Not really. It was between the British government and its own creation, the East India Company. I mean, this was a corporation that had become so powerful, it was basically running its own country. Okay, so this was the first real attempt by Parliament to get a handle on things. The Regulating Act of 1773 wasn't just a list of new rules. It was about building a real structure. For the first time, you get a Supreme Court, which brings a formal legal system into the mix. And, crucially, it created the Governor-General of Bengal, a role designed to centralize power and make sure everyone was reporting to one person. But one law was never going to be enough to tame this massive company. So the next move was actually pretty clever. Instead of having one boss, India would now have two. You'd have one representing the crown's political interests and another representing the company's commercial side. This set up this really fascinating and, let's be honest, complicated system of dual control. And here's how that whole two-boss system actually worked. You had the Board of Control, which was appointed by the Crown, handling all the big stuff. We're talking military, government, taxes. Meanwhile, the company's Court of Directors, they were left to manage the day-to-day business of trade. It was this really sharp way to split power from profit, and believe it or not, this balancing act would last for over 70 years. You can think of these charter acts as kind of like major software updates rolled out every 20 years or so. And with each update, the company's business powers got weaker, while the Crown's government control got stronger. First in 1813, boom, the trade monopoly is gone. By 1833, the company is almost completely out of the commerce business. And then by 1853, you start to see the first hints of the future, a civil service based on competition, and even a tiny bit of local representation. You could feel the ground shifting under everyone's feet. And that shift led to a full-blown earthquake. After the massive Indian Rebellion of 1857, the British government basically said, okay, this experiment of ruling through a private company is over. It's done. It was time for a direct takeover. The Government of India Act of 1858 was a complete and total game changer. It didn't just tweak the system, it ripped the old one out entirely. The East India Company was dissolved. That whole complicated dual control system, gone. From now on, all power was held directly by the British Crown. And the title change from Governor-General to Viceroy? That was a huge deal. It was so much more than just a new name. It was a powerful signal that the leader of India was no longer some corporate appointee. No, they were the direct, personal representative of the Queen. This is the moment India officially becomes the jewel in the crown of the British Empire, ruled directly from London. Now, with direct rule, a new demand started getting louder. Indians wanted a seat at their own table. The Morley-Minto reforms were the first very small step in that direction. For the very first time, an Indian was appointed to the Viceroy's top council. Members could also now ask follow-up questions about the budget. But, and this is a huge but, these reforms also planted a seed that would have massive consequences, the idea of separate electorates for Muslims. It was a decision that would echo for decades to come. Okay, so from here on out, things really start to pick up speed. The whole conversation shifts. It's no longer just about getting a voice in the government, it's about fundamentally redesigning it. We are on the final stretch now, heading towards self-rule. The first real experiment in sharing power was this thing called diarchy. The best way to think about it is like this. Imagine someone gives you the keys to the car, but they keep control of the steering wheel, the gas, and the brakes. So Indian ministers got to control departments like education and health. But all the real power, the money, the police, that stayed firmly in the hands of the British governors. It was a step, for sure, but a very, very cautious one. Seriously, if there is one single law you remember from this entire journey, make it this one. The Government of India Act of 1935 was the master plan. It was essentially the blueprint for the federal India we see today. It created that three-list system for dividing powers that's still in use. It got rid of that clunky diarchy system and gave the provinces way more freedom. And it laid the groundwork for national institutions like a federal port and a central bank. This was the final blueprint for the modern state.
But then, the Second World War changed absolutely everything. That 1935 blueprint, which was designed to help manage an empire, was now about to be used to dismantle it. The final act in this long legislative drama wasn't another reform. It was about letting go.
And this final law was just a clean break. No more baby steps. It declared India independent. It partitioned the subcontinent, creating two new nations, India and Pakistan. The powerful office of the viceroy was just abolished. And with the stroke of a pen, the British monarch was no longer the Emperor of India. Just like that, 2 centuries of British rule, built law by law, came to a sudden and definitive end. So, we've walked through this incredible journey, seeing how a series of laws build the actual machinery of a modern state. But of course, a government is so much more than just laws and buildings, right? The real question, the one that matters most, is what did all of this actually mean for the millions of people living through it? How did it shape their lives, their identities, their futures? And that, well, that's the story beyond the laws, a story that's still being written today.